Hello, my name is Dr. Catherine Billiot. I am a clinical psychologist. Today I am interviewing Dr. George Lindenfeld, a neuropsychologist and diplomate in clinical psychology. His passion is to assist our trauma-involved veterans to find lasting relief from the emotional symptoms of trauma. Dr. Lindenfeld has developed a neuroscience-based, non-invasive, and permanent solution for those with PTSD. In order for you to appreciate the power of this sound-based therapy, listen to the harrowing story of a Desert Storm veteran, Sean O'Hara, who underwent reset therapy with Dr. Lindenfeld.
On March 23, 1994, a mid-air collision occurred at Pope Air Force Base in North Carolina, resulting in a jet fighter plane hurtling toward 500 paratroopers who were preparing for Joint Army-Air Force maneuvers. 24 members of the 82nd U.S. Airborne Division were killed in the worst peacetime disaster for this division since the end of World War II. This came to be known as the Green Ramp disaster. Among the survivors was Desert Storm veteran Sean O'Hara. This is part of his story. From Chapter 2 of the 20-minute Trauma Fix, Suck It Up and Truck On. Since the planes crashed in March 1994, I hadn't been able to sleep for more than 6 hours. Before my appointment with Dr. Lindenfeld, I was anxious and hopeful at the same time. I remember having knots in my stomach and really being scared to death. I had a dream the night before the treatment and woke up soaking wet from sweat. The nightmare often ends with the same image of a dying trooper saying, "I'm thirsty. Can I have something to drink?" before he passed away. This was the target for my first reset session. We tuned in the right sound frequency to help me to connect with the trauma while I was wearing headphones. I was instructed to put myself into the trauma that took 24 lives. I swear, for the first 5 minutes, I was really there. I felt a cramping in my stomach, and then the heat, and then came the pain when I dove behind the wall of fire that was coming towards me. I saw all the carnage, the bodies, and then, after about 5 minutes, it became hard for me to focus on it anymore. It really altered. Afterwards, Dr. Lindenfeld said my brain had reset. As I tried to think of it immediately after, there were fewer details, and the images were fuzzy where before they had been so extremely focused. I was asked to compare the intensity from when we first started to how I was at the end of it, and honestly, I said that it went from a 10 to a 1. I still don't really understand how this happened, but with one treatment, my wife says I'm a changed man. I asked her what she meant, and she said, "Since you came home from that session, you've become that boy I fell in love with 25 years ago." I can feel the change in me now. I laugh again, I enjoy life, and I love my wife. Since my treatment well over a year ago, I had been able to sleep 8 hours a night like I used to with no flashbacks, no nightmares, and no survivor's remorse.
Sean's total treatment from start to finish was only 3 visits. The sound treatment itself totaled less than 60 minutes. As veterans and psychologists, both Dr. Lindenfeld and I are outraged by the bureaucratic resistance to innovative treatments that work to alleviate the emotional aspect of trauma. Our primary goal is to ignite a spark that will inspire veterans to demand access to available treatments that place their PTSD into total and lasting remission. I asked Dr. Lindenfeld how he became involved in creating this transformational treatment.
Dr. Billiot, thank you for having me. I'd like to give you a little bit of my past military history. After completing high school, I served in the Navy Seabees and then went on to obtain advanced degrees, ultimately leading to my doctorate and postdoctorate. I became quite interested in biofeedback as well as neurofeedback, and then later learned about the BOD, which was created by Dr. Frank Lawless around 2011. Around 2012, I came across an article in a magazine that was called Wired about the forgetting pill that erases painful memories forever. This was the inspiration for my developing reset therapy. Let me tell you about the neuroscientific underpinnings of how reset works. Reset stands for Reconsolidation Enhancement by Stimulation of Emotional Triggers. Now, how it works is rather complex on the one hand, and at the same time, it's quite simple on the other hand. As you can see by the diagram, the blue highlighted areas deactivate when PTSD is triggered. That means the person loses the ability to engage in complex thinking, such as multitasking. With the trauma itself, the person is only able to convey fragments of the experience, but loses access to the full context. Neither can they comprehend fully what others are saying to them. This is very frustrating to all that are involved.
Okay, so the scientific theory behind reset has been established. But I can say that the veterans I've worked with are reluctant to bring up painful memories. They've spent years and precious life energy just sucking it up, pushing the trauma down, or at best medicating it, managing it the best they can. How do you convince veterans to face this fear that they have with such intensity in order to do this treatment?
I invite them to go through the horror just one more time to free themselves for the rest of their lives from the terror they live every day, every night.
That's quite a leap for them, though, huh?
They also hear it from others that have done this,
Mm-hmm.
who give testimony.
And that helps.
Yes.
Okay. So, Dr. Linfeld, don't you have to establish a trust relationship with the veteran before proceeding with this treatment?
Hell no.
Okay. Why would that be?
Veterans tell me that they've had talk with counselors, psychiatrists. Nothing has changed. The trust happens after the change happens within them. Then the trust is unbelievably strong. I propose that it occurs after the mind is reset, not before.
And how do therapists develop the feeling of confidence in order to dive in and do that?
They get to see the eyes light up of the individual. They get to see the person become that person again that they once were. They feel the excitement of creating positive change again. That's how therapists get activated in this process.
Okay. Tell me, how does the treatment actually work? What are you doing with the patient?
Well, the patient is sitting across from me and has headphones placed. And there's this little box that's used to adjust different sound. And we turn the sound on and leave it on for a period of time, up to 20 minutes. And this is what creates the change that I'm referring to.
So it's just headphones.
More than that, a little more complicated.
Okay. All right. Well, how can people find out more about this treatment?
Let me show you a slide that shows how memory works in the brain.
Okay.
Let's start with the topic of consolidation, reconsolidation. These are terms that are used in regards to how memory is stored in the mind. You see, PTSD is really an issue of memory, not per se an issue of the trauma itself. A special sound is able to change what happens with this reconsolidation process. Now, reconsolidation happens each and every time a memory is brought up again. In looking at the display, you will see that at first, when it is reconsolidated, the lines below are close and tight, and that then goes into the memory system and is restored again. Now, the next time we bring it up, you'll notice the arrow. That's reset therapy, and that's the sound coming into the brain, which alters that memory being restored through binaural beats, and that is slight differences in sound in one ear and the other. And then you'll see the final section in green, wherein the memory that is stored now looks different in the lines down the bottom than it did in the beginning. In other words, the brain has restored part of the memory and has not restored the emotional part of the memory.
My patients have had great success with reset for other problems as well. I've worked on it, depression. I have a patient who says that his essential tremors have stopped completely. He's amazed, and so am I. Chronic pain. What other things have you used it for?
Well, first off, that's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And there are many medical applications that are being explored by my colleagues. I'm focused on PTSD, and I'll be writing additional books on depression and survivor's guilt, on complex PTSD, on addiction, on chronic pain, and the last one I have in mind is on our first responders. I'm also doing involvement with research to be able to push this exploration further. So I'm seeking foundational funds for monies in order to be able to conduct an fMRI study. I'm also working with a colleague in Sarasota conducting what's called brain mapping for a pre and post Afghan hero
Mm-hmm.
that's returned with some damage.
That's state-of-the-art stuff. Huh?
Absolutely.
He's going to see his brain change. Amazing.
I know it,
Amazing.
and he knows it. I'd also suggest you take a look at my book, The 20-Minute Trauma Fix, that will be coming out on Amazon on November 4th, 2015.
Very well then.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.